Okay, I'm going to show you how to go about making a ear flap hat, and I'm going to show you how to do a general guide and setting up any loom that you have to be able to make the ear flap cap. Okay, I'm going to show you how to do this. I'm going to show you the setup for the even peg, and I'm going to show you an example of something that doesn't line up exactly when you divide by 4. So I'm using the 60 peg 3/8 inch gauge loom, and I need to divide it up into 4 sections. Well, 60 divided by 4 is 15. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start here and I'm going to count over 15. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 12, 13, 14, 15. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Adds up. Okay, now we need to take and figure out our ear sections. Okay. This is our front, where the face is. And this is the back, where the back of the neck is. So these are our ear flap sections on either side. And so what we need to do is we take our 15 and we divide it by 3. Which is easy. It's 5. So what you're going to do is you're going to count over 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, and then you're going to count over 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now, you'll notice that I didn't count from this stitch marker, but I counted on this stitch marker. Keep in mind, when you count to 15, the 15 is where the stitch marker is. So that's for this section, and that one is for this section. So we know we needed to count that one. Okay, you're going to do the same thing on the opposite side. That one's going to be for that section, so we're going to count from here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Stitch marker. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Stitch marker. And you should have 5 pegs in between those stitch markers on each side. That is your setup, okay? And what those stitch markers in the middle are doing is that's your narrowest spot at the bottom of your ear flaps, where you're going to increase up to the stitch markers on the side. This one was easy. It added up the way we needed it to. But this one's not going to be as easy, and we'll need to figure out how to add it up. It's not going to evenly do a 4, divide into 4. It's the 90 peg 4th inch. So I'm going to kind of show you how to go about this. Okay, because it's 90 and we're going to divide that by 4, that's 22.5. Okay, what that 0.5 means is you're going to have 2 sections that have a difference. Okay, and what you need to figure is which sections you want to have more pegs and which sections you want to have less when it comes out to a 0.5 or something that is uneven. Okay, so what I like to do is I like to count when I have a 22.5. What I do is I count 23 for the front and 23 for the back with 22 on the side. Okay, and watch this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23. Put a stitch marker there. Then, because this is going to be a ear area, we're going to count 22. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. Then we're to the back half of the section, so it's going to be 23. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23. And if we counted right, the next section should be 22. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. Okay, so that gives you an idea of how to go about that. It doesn't divide evenly into 4, but it's a 0.5. You know that two sections are going to be one above that 22 or something, one above what your actual amount was, and two sections are going to be the actual amount. Okay, well, we have our two sections, okay, our ear sections that are 22. And we're going to want to divide those by 3, okay? So you'll do 22 divided by 3. So it's basically going to be 7, okay? Just tend to round to the closest number. So this is going to be 7. So what we're going to do is we're going to count from 7 because that's part of that section. We're going to go count from 7. We're going to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Put a marker there. Okay. Then we're going to take that over here and we're going to count from 7 there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And we'll put a marker in right there. Which leaves 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 in the middle. And that's fine. So I divided that by 3. I got 7. And that leaves 8 in the middle, which is fine. You just go to what is closest, and you'll find that it's not going to be off by much. And so that's kind of how you go about doing it on something that doesn't add up evenly. So don't hesitate to use a loom that may not add up evenly with using 4, dividing by 4, dividing by 3, that kind of thing. But you divide by 3 because you're wanting to set your ear flaps into thirds so that when you increase, it gives a nice sloped effect. This isn't going to be a dramatic ear flap, it's going to be a subtle ear flap. So that's how you do it on an uneven loom that doesn't divide into 4 easily, or even into 3. So let's get started. I'm going to be using a worsted yarn. This is Lion's brand Heartland. And what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be starting off with a ear flap. Okay, I'm going to be starting off with an ear flap. So I'm going to be working over here, and then I'm going to switch and work over here. Okay. And I'm going to show you the technique so that the hat doesn't curl at all. Okay. So we know that's our front section and this is our side section. And we're going to be starting with these 5 in between these stitch holders. So, go ahead and you cast on those 5. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Now, what you're going to do is you're going to E-wrap, purl, E-wrap, purl, E-wrap. Okay, now keep up with what you've just done. We're going to be doing a rib stitch, and this will keep it from curling. Okay, at this point you can actually remove these. You don't need them now. You've got your basic guide. Okay. Now, remember we just E-wrapped, so we're going to increase, which means we're going to go and wrap the next peg. We're just going to wrap it. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to E-wrap, purl, E-wrap, purl, E-wrap, wrap to increase. We finish with an E-wrap, keep that in mind. So we're going to E-wrap, purl, E-wrap, purl, E-wrap, and then this one's going to be a purl. Okay, we're keeping that in mind. Okay, so that when we increase over here, we know we're going to need to purl to keep up with that rib stitch. Okay, so there's purl, E-wrap, purl, E-wrap, purl, E-wrap, and purl. Remember, we finished with a purl, so that when we increase over here, we know we're going to be starting with a purl. So purl, E-wrap, purl, E-wrap, purl, E-wrap, purl, E-wrap. Remember, you finished with an E-wrap, so you're going to be starting with an E-wrap after your increase. And you're going to continue doing this until you've reached here, just before this stitch marker, and on this stitch marker over here. So continue this increasing with keeping up what you finish with your rib stitch. Okay, so go ahead and pause the video and get that far, and then I'll show you how to start the next ear section so that we can go in and start on the main hat. Okay, I'm going to show you the last 2 rows. Okay, so I'm going to remove the stitch marker because I'm not going to need it after this point. I'm going to increase there, and I finished with an E-wrap. Okay, so I'm going to E-wrap and purl my way across. Okay, you'll see that that's my last increase over here, and I'm not going to want to increase again. I don't need this stitch marker at this point either. So in order to add in that last increase over here, I need to do 1 more row. I finished with a purl. We're going to start with a purl. Okay, this means we have established our ear flap over here. Okay, now we need to do one over here. Okay, so what we want to do is, I don't like to cut my yarn, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pull it over to here. There's my 5 in the middle. So I'm going to at least cast on, and then I'm going to have to calculate what I need to do, because my rib stitch is going to continue when I add the rest of the pegs after my ear flaps. Okay. So I have just cast on my 5, and I'm going to need to go back. Now, here's a trick. Okay, we finished with a purl over here, so purl, E-wrap, 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 purl, E-wrap. So luckily enough, I'm going to be able to do the exact same thing that I did over here. I'm going to be E-wrapping. Again, I don't need these now. I got my general guide. I'll take them off. I will need that one. Okay, so I know to get started, I'm going to do the exact same thing. I'm going to E-wrap, purl. Wrap, and I left off with an E-wrap. So again, go in and repeat the exact same thing that we just did on the other side, on this side. And then we will move on to the rest of the hat. Now, it may work up a little differently on another loom but just keep up with what you're doing. If it works up a little differently, you can continue with starting with a purl instead of an E-wrap. It's really not that big of a deal to change things up. You're just trying to keep consistent with your rib stitch is all you're trying to do. So pause the video, complete your other ear flap, and then I will show you how to get the rest of the pegs involved to do the rest of that. Okay, we finished our ear flap areas here. Now we're ready to add the rest of the hat in, and remember that we're going to just cast on our empty pegs. This is the front. And when we get to a peg that already has a stitch on it, remember we finished off with a purl. If you're not sure, go back in and look. The lifted areas are E-wraps, the indented areas are purls. So we know we need to do a purl. And then we'll do a purl. You can snug that up. Okay. Now we know we need to cast on those empty pegs. The great news is, since we know this is the exact same thing as the ear flap on this side, we're going to be starting with a purl. Okay, then we finished with a purl. So now we need to do our first official row where we include our cast on rows. And so we finished with a purl, we know we're going to start with an E-wrap. And we're just going to continue the rib stitch all the way around. Okay. And after we complete this row, what you're going to want to do is you're going to do basically 15 rows of the rib stitch. Now, I'm going to give you a rule of thumb. If you're working with a different loom and how many rows you're doing and all that, I'm going to give you a concept to go on to give you a little help. Okay, we finished our first row. And I'm going to do it for this particular loom. I'm going to continue going at this for 15 rows. So I'm going to give you a little trick. Okay. Take your number of pegs, divide it in half, and that's 30. Okay. And I generally like to do on the 3/8 is divide the pegs in half, do however many rows that number was, and then add 5. But because my fine gauge bind off is basically 5 rows, I'm going to be doing 30 rows and then doing my fine gauge bind off, drawstring bind off. Okay, so for me, it's 15, so half the hat, because we're basically working a beanie at this point, half the hat I want to have the rib stitch. The other half I want to be a regular E-wrap, which is another 15 rows, and then do my fine gauge drawstring bind off. Okay, so if you're working with another loom, divide it in half. That's how many number of rows, and then your fine gauge bind off. Okay, now if you're working with the 1/4 inch, I like to add 10 rows, so you'll need to just add 5 and keep in mind that you'll be doing the fine gauge bind off. Okay, so what you're going to do is you're going to continue this rib stitch for a total of 15 rows, And then what you're going to do is you're going to E-wrap for 15 rows, and then you're going to do the fine gauge bind off. And that's basically how you do a ear flap hat, okay? And there's going to be a link for the fine gauge bind off and everything. And then when you're done, I usually snip that, weave in the ends, and to add a nice finishing touch, what I'll do is usually go in and do a crochet border. But that's entirely up to you. With the way this is being done, you shouldn't have any curling or anything like that, so you shouldn't have to do anything like that. But that is basically how you go about making an ear flap hat. The most complicated part is the ear flaps. Otherwise, after that, it's basically a beanie.